Can I have mine before I put the coats on?
I've got 4 minutes. Starts in it's cold.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? Give me a wave if you can. Amazing. Shall we get started? Thank you all for coming. And this is our first Zoom event, so bear with me. I can't move the slides on unless I press play. Okay. Right. So. Hello, everyone. Oh no, my YouTube. It's all fine. It's all fine. No need to panic. So this is Tech for Good Live. I'm Bex. We've run around 40 something events now, is it? And this is our first ever online event. So welcome. We are talking about bots and AI and all the good they can do in the world for a nice change instead of all the negatives that they usually get a bad rep. So we are sponsored by Luminate and the Co-op Foundation and the Federation, who usually give us a free venue, but obviously we don't need that today, but they've been very supportive anyway, and it's enabled us to pay for this webinar software, which we are testing for the first time, so please be kind. We have some etiquette that we're going to try and abide by, so if you can all keep your microphone muted if you're not talking. We will use the Q&A feature if you have questions for speakers, and we'll see how confident I feel at the time. But if I might get you to read out your own question, if I choose your question to be read out, we'll see how that goes, if I feel comfortable with it. But yeah, be understanding though, we might, depending on how many people are asking questions, might not be able to answer all of them. So I will just pick a select few if some are similar. Have your video turned on if you can. It's always quite nice just to say hi, and then we can all see each other. We do have a code of conduct if you want to check that out as well, but maybe some of it isn't relevant online. We do want you to still have a conversation, so maybe at the next event we might trial putting you all in groups. So Zoom does this really cool thing, if you haven't used it or seen it before, where it randomly puts you all in groups of smaller numbers, so you can all have a chat and we can set like a conversation so you can all get to meet each other. Because something that we get told quite a lot about Tech for Good is that people's favorite thing, other than obviously the wonderful speakers, is getting to know other people within the network and finding people that they connect with. So hopefully we can still keep some of that up while we're online. So have a go in the chat, keep the chat open. Please feel free to discuss what you're hearing from the speakers in there, or use Twitter if you want. We're using the hashtag TFGL, so please feel free to converse on either of those platforms. If you do need urgent help with something, I've said raise your hand, but I'm struggling to use that bit of functionality. So maybe just post in the chat. Hera's around, she can help. I can help if I'm not speaking. Yeah, obviously we're all on mute anyway, so there won't be too much opportunity to talk over each other. And yeah, if you are on video, don't forget that you are on video and that everyone can see you. I think that's everything. If you have any questions, well, Hera wants to use the hashtag TFGLIVE, TFG Live, instead of TFGL, but TFGL is on all my slides, so I don't want to confuse people. Use whichever one you want, I guess. Brilliant. So what's going to happen? It's our 41st event. We've got 3 speakers. So Dina, Stuart and Kevin will talk in that order, and after each talk we'll have a quick Q&A, see if there are any questions. We'll ask them to the speakers and let them answer. Afterwards, we've got community announcements, which we usually do on the spot, but because the software requires that you sign up in advance, we've got 3 amazing community announcements signed up in advance. So Tom, Edwin and Anne will do 2 to 3 minutes each. And then I will do a quick outro, introduce the next event to you all, and then we are done. So without further ado, Dina, are you around? Have you got your presentation sorted? I'll give you a second to unmute and yeah, I can hear you. Excellent. I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share.
Mine, second. Hi everyone, my name is Dina and I volunteer in an amazing organization called Shen. I've been with Shen for the last 5 years and I'm here to talk about a cool project of us called Little Window. Oops. It took me 15 clicks to find the information on a local refuge. If you only have 5 minutes alone, that's at least 10 clicks too many. That's what we heard from one of our survivors who spoke to us. It takes them 5 minutes to find an information they need and critical information. And this is the problem that Shen is solving with our chatbot, Little Window. So Little Window is a chatbot that directs survivors of abuse to the right information on Shen, reducing the time that it takes to get help and which can save their lives. After a bootstrapped pilot last year, it has more than 500 conversations and we generate 5,000 interactions. Now we are building the next version of it. Little Window is one of the first chatbots in AI innovation at the intersection of gender-based violence and tech for good. 1 in 4 women in the UK facing domestic abuse. That means around the world that we have 1 in 3. We wanted to provide essential information online for those experiencing domestic abuse in a way that it's easy to find, simple to navigate, and quick to interact with. Currently, we have a Shen website. We receive a lot of numbers of inquiries through the social media, and it's difficult for us to be online all the time since we are all volunteers. And that's why we hope that Little Window would be able to assist with this user through an immediate response. Now, how we did it, we work with a team of students from Founders and Coders. That's a program based in London, teach people who want to become entrepreneurs, how to code. We've been reached out from a group of students who wanted to do their final project with Shen. We already have the idea about a Little Window and we found like that's gonna be a very good match for us. We wanted to build like an ethical chatbot, make it clear from the beginning, this is not a human. And that's why from the very, very start, you can see it's a cat, not a human. And Little Window, even from the beginning itself, when you do an introduction and doing the GDPR check, it tells like, hey, I'm not a human, I'm a cat. All the script is available in English and French, and is written by Shen team. Shen, we have like 70% volunteers that experience domestic violence. And when we test the whole platform, we test it with survivors in person and online, because we want to make sure is the right platform for them. What we do is the right thing. Now I want to share with you what we have learned from our experience, from what we built so far. First of all is a trust. We maintain a trust by telling very from upfront that the fact that Little Window is not a human and it can only answer certain things. So we have set the expectation from the very beginning. If you check our Shen website, you will find that the chatbot is very big, and that's something we decided like to make it big on our screen. We didn't, it's not something like we're not sure about or it was a mistake. We wanted to be obvious for them where to go to find an information in a very easy way. And we don't collect any private information, and that is something good. Pretty much all the AI and ethical researchers agree that you don't collect private information. And what we wanted to make is fast and simple. And that, again, is very good because that's what our user wants, something very fast and something simple. They don't want something very complicated, which take them time to figure out how to use it. And nothing can replace the human touch. People get frustrated sometimes from the chatbot. They want to interact with a human. They want to talk to them on the phone, on a chat. They need the human connection to empathize with them and find a solution for their questions. What we're going to be up next from what we built this version, what we're going through the next version, We want to expand the whole conversation on Little Window to cover more subjects such as like local organizations, sign of abuse, mental health, sexual assault. We have a friend called Level Up. It's one of friend of ours. It's feminist companion organization. They shut down recently, and because of lack of funds, and they had work on a chat on a Facebook bot. We are fortunate that they have given us like all the content, and we're gonna get all the content and put it on our chatbot next. We want to increase the opportunity for users to interact with Little Window, and that means like we want to have like more conversation and give them the opportunity to give us a feedback on what we build. We want, of course, to add more language. The language that we have at the moment is English and French. A lot of our users speak in Arabic, speak in Urdu, Pashto, and we want to have this language available for them. So we'll be reaching out more users. We want to introduce a capacity for Little Window to talk to people through a diagnostic check. So that means like if there is a spyware or spouse war installed on their devices, we're able them to find out early when they're talking to us. And then we wanted to do like more trend analysis. So when people are using it, we know where people, how people are using it, where the people are coming from, and that's gonna help us to build, to make our chatbot is more inclusive. And finally, Little Window is an open source. As all the things that we build in Shane, as Shane itself, we are open source. We believe in that, and we want to encourage any other organization in the sectors. Sorry for that. Really sorry. Oh, why is that?
Gina, your mic is working. We can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, and last point is like Little Window is open source. We want to encourage other organizations in our sector to use the documentation and build their own. And that's everything from me.
Great, thank you. That was really interesting. We do have one question. So it's from Anonymous, so I won't get Anonymous to read it out because I don't know who they are. So I'll read it out for them. So anecdotally, I have heard increases in DV calls, domestic violence calls for help in Texas in the USA since COVID. Do you know if this is happening in the UK and where someone might find that data from?
We know that there is an increase in the calls, and that's why other organizations like Women in AIDS and Refuge that trying to do the same and have like online facilities to answer all the questions. I don't know the statistics, but I think you can find it out online.
It's an increase in 30% in China and Italy. So we think that the UK will probably say, in fact, Andy Burnham in his address today said the same thing, that there is an increase in calls to the police, but didn't really say the number.
Great, thank you very much. Doesn't look like there's any other questions, so we will move on. So we've got Stuart Pearson and Stephen Booth both presenting together. So have you both got your screen shares ready to go? Is that a no?
I think you're going to put it up, are you, Stuart?
He's got it. Okay, I'll let you both go. You can both unmute.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm Stuart Pearson. I'm the CDO at Citizens of ICE Manchester. I'm presenting, obviously, with Stephen. You want to introduce yourself?
Guys, how are you doing? I'm Stephen. I run Autosermo. I've been working with Stuart on building our advisor bot. So Stuart's going to run through our project, and I'm going to just jump in at certain points and pick up some technical details that I think are interesting.
Feel a bit under pressure after Dina's excellent presentation. So
Absolutely.
brilliant. So just who are Citizens of Ice? So who are we? So we're an independent charity, 280 local independent charities, and we deliver services from about 2,500 locations across England and Wales. We also deliver email, web chat, and telephone advice. So obviously the aim of the service is obviously to deliver free, independent and confidential advice to anybody. The strapline is whoever you are, whatever the problem. But strategically, the aims really are to provide frictionless access to advice, so making it as easy as possible for people who need help with issues to contact us. As the service has been going 80 years, so it started in the Second World War, and obviously things have changed a bit since 1939. So the service as a whole is really struggling now to meet new client expectations. So their digital platform, led by the national team, is getting over 25 million visits a year. I think if anybody's seen on Twitter the recent posts they've done about the amount of hits they've had since COVID, that figure probably is a lot higher now. And one of the challenges is the demographics, that people have a different expectation of how you can access services. So Gartner did some research saying 88% of all millennials, their primary channel of choice would be through chat. Now, when we say millennials, remember that's anybody under 36. That's a big part of the of society. So one of the big challenges for Citizens of Ice as a network is the challenge of digital demand. So looking at the data internally, we've seen the demand for digital exceeds well into the evening. So compared to telephone advice dies off about 5 o'clock, starts about 9, whereas digital demand starts really early, around 6, and then carries on way past 8 o'clock in the evening. So these are all people who are trying to access our web chat services. And there is this obviously growing expectation of out of hours responses. Now at the moment, because Citizens of Ice is, as well as the website, the more guided interactive advice element is done through live chat, through web chat, which obviously requires a human to be logged in and providing assistance for people asking for advice. So in Manchester, we thought this is an opportunity really to kind of reach out and give these clients some kind of service. And one of the ideas was obviously a chatbot, and how feasible would it be to create a chatbot. And if we used it, we could build it on some kind of messaging platform, because then what that would do is allow us not to be restricted to live chat. By using asynchronous messaging, clients could post messages out of hours, and then humans could pick it up when they came into the service. Gartner, again, they've done some research. They did revise it about 2 years ago. They said 85% of all customer interactions would be handled by AI. I know when I said AI, I'm guessing Stephen is wincing at that terminology for bots, but they've kind of rephrased that to about 15% they think will be dealt with next year through bots. So we just thought it's a great opportunity potentially to deal with really simple high volume calls. So what we did in Manchester, we thought we'd do a very simple MVP using Facebook Messenger as the front end UI. Obviously Facebook has its challenges, but at the moment it was free, so that's kind of why we chose that. And it was something that clients would already have installed. So what we didn't want to do is try and create an app that no one would download. So we'd use one that they've already downloaded. And on the back end, I think Stephen will probably talk a bit more about the tech stack, but we use Dialogflow, which is Google's chatbot building function. And then obviously we got auto summing, because like Dina said, one of the most important things we felt is that any client who's coming to us who could be particularly in distress or could have a very serious issue, we didn't want them getting stuck in any kind of chatbot loop of hell. So we always wanted the ability for the bot to hand over to a human if it either got confused or if the human has to be handed over. So the result was we've developed a very kind of simple at the moment FAQ chatbot. So all clients, when they access Messenger, their first interaction will be with a bot. And just like Dina said, we were very upfront straight away. So we don't try and mislead the client. This is a human. We say this is a chatbot. And we kind of sell the value of the chatbot so that the clients can buy into that, saying what we're going to try and do is get your answer here and now. If we can't, we're going to collect information that'll be useful when we pass you over to a human, which will make it easier for them to deal with your issue more quickly. I mean, we looked at a number of options in terms of how the chatbot would kind of function. So the gold standard would be able to use NLP, natural language processing, which is a very organic conversation. But that's really difficult, particularly around advice, where we're often presented with a huge wall of text, which is hard for humans to decipher sometimes, so impossible for a bot. So we kind of lent in really on having a decision tree using buttons really to guide a client through the advice journey. So what we found since we launched late last year is we're helping about 400 clients in Manchester a month through the chatbot. Housing and employment are the main inquiry areas. So that's interesting for us, maybe not for you guys, but traditionally Citizens Advice main inquiry areas are benefits and debt. So it's interesting that the clients coming through on that channel seem to be a different cohort of people. So employment housing probably ties into the demographic where they're obviously a lot younger than maybe some of our clients using traditional face-to-face or telephone, where probably employment and housing are bigger issues for them. We also noticed a high number of users where English was not their first language. Again, we need to do more research, but we're kind of thinking that's probably to do with tools like Google Translate, where they can kind of write in their first language, translate it into English, and then post it into the chat, and then do the same with our advice responses. What we've learned, and again, I'll probably ask Stephen to jump in, is, I mean, the first thing we've learned is advice is really hard.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think this is about our third iteration of the bot. So we've tried a few different ways of developing it. We've kind of really simplified it as much as possible to try and get the right information from the client, try and prevent them posting this wall of text. So we've definitely developed an agile process. But what is encouraging is 10-15%, which kind of backs up with Gartner's predictions of those clients that are getting their answer directly through the chatbot, which at the moment in our small pilot with 400 people a month, it's not a lot. But if you go back to the figures Citizens Advice were producing, where they're getting 1 million people trying to access web chat a year, and it probably be a lot more at the moment, that 10-15% could be a huge amount of clients who are getting the help they need immediately. And what's come out, and again, going back to what Dina was saying, is that human plus the chatbot, that kind of hybrid is essential, really. We're thinking for the service we deliver. But we're also kind of seeing that there is some wins. We could really develop the chatbot further, some clear use cases. So like I said, at the moment, we've been leaning into the simple FAQs around debt, benefits, housing, eviction, those kind of frequently asked questions that we get, that there is really good self-help pages already on the national site. Also data collection as well. So often human advisors, for example, for the debt assessment, they're basically reading the script of information they need to collect before they can progress the client to the next stage. So if we could kind of get the bot to be involved there and just do that data collection exercise for the advisors, it frees the advisors up. Booking and cancelling appointments would be an obvious one. So we're speaking with the national team about the opportunity to look into that. And also looking at status updates for grant applications. So again, we're a charity, so like a lot of charities, when you offer a free service, it's very popular, which means it's very hard to cope with the demand. So to be able to get a lot of that white noise out of the traffic of telephone and face-to-face would be a brilliant use case for the bot. So often we get calls from clients who are just wanting to touch base and find where they're up to with their grant application, or potentially an appeal or award. And again, if they could just have a code, type it in, and a bot could repeat back where that appeal is up to, or that grant award, it would pull those clients out of the need for humans to interact. This is kind of where we're thinking for the future. So we definitely think chatbots are are still really in their infancy, and that they're very much about freeing up human skills. So when we initially started talking with our staff about and volunteers about a chatbot, I think there was some nerves about, are you trying to replace us? And the chatbot will not be able to do that anytime soon, but also it's about freeing humans up to do those more complex issues and providing clients with that kind of emotional response that a lot of clients need. Also, I think if anyone's seen Google's recent paper with their experiments with a chatbot called Mina, which is very, very dialogue heavy. So leaning into that conversational AI, which is the kind of the dream. Chatbots are going to get better. So there's huge opportunities for nonprofits and charities to get the help they need in terms of managing that demand. Machine learning, so the opportunity as we get more and more involved with chatbots and increase the data, we can start to hopefully predict clients' issues before they can. So based on their journey and the kind of options they're picking, we can identify where we need to escalate those clients quickly through to a human rather than letting the person kind of navigate aimlessly across the website. But again, like Dean has pinched on my best bits, I think as we begin this journey to look at bots as a possible solution, I think you have to have the AI ethics kind of agreed at the beginning and kind of baked into the product as you develop it. So Stephen, I don't know if you want to kind of jump in and do all the bits I've missed.
No, sure. I think that was a pitch perfect presentation, to be honest. I think you've covered everything there that's salient to the project. The only little bit that I'd add is around specifically technology, and just to say that the different approaches we took, we've used several different platforms on the journey. The first was FlowXO, which is a platform that I had a hand in building, but it was a little bit too constrained for our use case because we were getting such a variation in requests and conversational requests coming into the chatbot. We then moved on to that Dialogflow and Facebook integration, which is serving us really well at the moment. There's a question there for our future, though, whether we want to be tied to one conversational interface. And what's and again in our talk, I'm going to reference back to what Dina was talking about a few minutes ago, which is the idea of having that open source chat window, which is, to be honest, where I see the future of conversational technology going. I don't think people are going to be happy to tie themselves into a social media provider in future, or indeed a company that provides some chat software. I think what we are going to see is an open source project that really takes off, which is the conversational interface, which plugs into any of those various machine learning tools or AIs that are out there. The final thing I'd talk about is that AI point. You look at what Microsoft are quoting for their machine learning and AI platforms, and they say they can get up to 95% at the moment. And to be honest, I don't think we're going to get to 100%. This is not going to be a progression like we see with Moore's law and processing power, for instance. We're not going to get closer to the asymptote and suddenly have an amazing AI. In my view, it's going to happen overnight. We'll get to that event horizon, and it'll just happen straight away, and AI will become prevalent. But until then, I think it is just making machine learning models more intelligent through all the training that we can give them through collecting conversational data.
That's us. Thanks, Becky.
Well, thank you. So we do have a few questions, and I have one as well. So this is particularly at Stuart, what information security measures are important, particularly when working with protected groups?
Sorry, I got a Slack ping as you were speaking. And sorry. Go on.
What information security measures are important, particularly for working with protected groups?
So this has, like I'm sure Stephen will join, this has been a real challenge, really, because we've obviously had conversations with Citizens Advice's information governance team particularly about using Facebook Messenger as a UI, and we've met with Messenger UK's kind of head of product to get kind of guidance from them around GDPR. So you have this situation which Stephen was alluding to in terms of the need to have a white label product, because if you're using WhatsApp or Messenger as your kind of access channel to clients, so it makes sense in terms of the clients who are already using these products. They understand it, they want to access us through those options. But if you get a right to erase your request, we can obviously abide by that and delete all the information from our side. But then it's how much does a client understand? They've got kind of two terms of service. They've got a term of service with Facebook that they would need to contact Facebook to delete the chat on their platform as well. So we're still struggling with it, to be honest. That didn't really answer the question, but
I think she was kind of unfair about throwing you like the toughest question so far.
I thought it was a good question though about working with protected.
yeah.
It's something to consider. I'm going to ask my question first before I ask the other two, but I am going to ask the other two because they're both really interesting. So I'm wondering, how was it getting sign off on budget to go for this, and was it difficult to get that through the board or management?
No, so we were lucky, really. I think funding for, I think when you had the event a few months ago with Mike Wild for the voluntary sector, funding for non-profits for digital innovation is quite difficult, really. One, because there is so few pots, and because of that, there's so much competition. So we had pitched the idea to several funders, and we managed to secure a small pot of funding from the Tenancy Deposit Scheme Foundation to test it. And we were lucky, obviously, that we also Sermo are based in Manchester, so we'd kind of met them through mutual acquaintance, and Stephen's been really good in terms of doing a lot of stuff with the kind of spirit of tech for good, really. So he's done a lot of the additional development and teething issues and snagging problems kind of free of charge, which I'm guessing he's regretting within the current climate.
Not at all. It's. I mean, now's the time. As you know, the government are calling out for all sorts of volunteers right now, and this. I'm just glad that we got this in place nice and early. We're doing some good, which is exactly what we wanted to do.
I think the challenge, I think for Citizens of Ice is the way, obviously, because it's a network, you're 280 individual charities. We've got the advantage of testing something locally in Manchester at a small scale, with the opportunity to scale it up nationally. But that brings its own headaches. So if Facebook changes their APIs and we have to quickly change the bot, that's a quick conversation with Stephen, and we can get that finished within an hour. And maybe one or two clients we have to kind of apologise to if they're doing that on a national scale, particularly at the moment. That will be a bigger issue. So yeah, I think the funding, you do need the funding, because I think because we've used like Facebook Messenger because it was free, and Dialogflow because it was free. I think if you were to do something at a bigger scale on the national platform, you would be looking at a lot more money than what we've spent.
And I think that's a function of the fact that, again, chatbots are not there to replace humans. You still need the human input, and you still need the human factor to really make this technology work.
Next question. So Stuart, you mentioned the ethics around this, and it's something that you want to consider as you go further into kind of AI and deploying that sort of stuff. This question is kind of about that, and I know there are I think I'm right in saying there are about 200 AI ethics guidelines out there. I think the challenge is probably that we don't know which one we should be using. But this question is around, and it goes out to Dina as well, and Hira, if you have any thoughts on this, has there been a conversation around a universal AI chatbot guideline? So I don't know whether any of those AI guidelines include chatbots, to set the standards for ethics and privacy. I don't know if there are any you looked at, or if you have any thoughts on this, either of you.
In terms of AI ethics, we're very much coming from the point that at the moment bots aren't AI. It's machine learning, but even within that, obviously you've got issues. So I think And it was really good. Kind of Dina had done the same. I think the starting point for us was that we would be upfront and say this is not a human. I think the nature of the client, both client groups that we talked about today, is that you are going to get vulnerable people approaching you, and we didn't want to pretend it was a human, or even by accident let them believe it was a human. So in terms of ethics, it was very much kind of setting our stall out that we made the decision not even to give it a name. We just said this is the Citizens of Ice Manchester chatbot, because we didn't want somebody kind of launching into quite an emotive story and then to be kind of hit with, sorry, I didn't understand that. But the bigger question about AI ethics, I think I would always hand that on to the national team, let them have the headaches around that.
That's a good option to have. Final question. So both Dina and Stuart have touched on making it clear that the chatbot is not a human. What impact do you think speaking to a chatbot has on the user? So are people less impatient when faced with a chatbot, or, you know, are all ages interacting with it in a similar way? I think these are quite interesting questions. Yeah, how do people interact with the chatbot versus interacting with a human?
I don't know if Stephen, you wanted to jump in around. So one of the things we wanted to look at is those. So in a way, everybody has to interact with the chatbot if they use Facebook Messenger, because that's the first thing that they kind of get. I mean, they could obviously refuse to use it and then drop out. So what Stephen, at the moment when we first launched it, Dialogflow wasn't great at collecting the data because Facebook and Google don't like speaking to each other. So Stephen's had to kind of produce something himself, and what we're looking at the moment is when clients drop out of the chatbot, at what stage they're dropping out, and then whether there is any correlation between client group.
The big advantage of this technology is being able to very quickly parse input and output. And by that I mean, you know, anecdotally, when you call the bank and you're put into the IVR queue, you know, and I'm sure everybody else on this call very, very quickly gets to a human advisor as soon as they can. You press note, or, you know, you say you want to speak to a human, and the IVR queue can't handle that. And you get to, you know, you get put into the holding music and so on and so forth. With a chatbot, you can give back a response right away saying, yes, of course, you know, we want to get you to a human advisor as soon as you can. But, you know, you can use the power of communicating then to say, actually, you know, that's not the fastest way of getting you the help that you need. If you follow this process, we can absolutely assure you, you will get a human eventually, but there's some steps you can take to really make sure you get the best advice that you need. So it's harnessing the power of, it's being upfront with people that this is an automated conversation. And again, you know, not pretending it's a human, but then using the power of, you know, of communication technology to say, you know, to get your message across. We will help you, but please let us help you help, you know, help yourself.
Hera, did you say sometimes people are mean to your chatbot?
Yes. So to Little Window, we've had, we were in a kind of prickly situation on Twitter where we were sort of standing up to trans rights, and we got a huge, like, we got loads of people messaging us saying, you want women to die, you're evil. And then we had a DDoS event attempt at our website, and because the bot is quite big on the website, people play with it. So there were like, I think 10 or 15 messages from some men's rights activists who were kind of saying, you know, do I not matter? You know, what are you? Whose agenda are you with? It was just really, some really bizarre comments. But actually, to your question, Bex, I think about how it changes the relationship, it's something that we've thought about a lot because we're run by volunteers and we definitely cannot staff it. We have noticed that for some people, it's just the worst thing. So some of the messages when I was going through our chat logs, one of the messages said like, why can't I talk to a human? Or you're not helping me. Or how can I really get help? Or you don't understand me. This is frustrating. So, you know, we take those comments really seriously, of course, because the idea of the chatbot, but the way we think about it is a chatbot is for those people who have specifically multiple identities. So with Jen, we are talking to women from different backgrounds. So if that's someone like me who wants to say, oh, I'm from Pakistan, but I live in the UK and I want to see information about Pakistan and the UK. So, you know, instead of going to 20 different links and clicking in different places on the website, they're kind of getting a reading list saying, okay, you care about these things from these two countries, here's everything you need. But for some, you know, it's just not the best thing. So actually in our next version, something that Dina and I and the rest of our team are working on is kind of dissuading people from having that conversation right at the beginning, saying, here's stuff that I can help with, here's stuff I cannot help with. And if I can't help you with this, here's like where you can go, which is hard because our stuff is global. So we can't just say, go to this local advice line. So these are all really difficult challenges, but it's just, I think we just have to be radically honest about it and saying like, that's how these are tough design decisions. If anyone's interested in design justice principles, it's one of those things that they talk about is every design decision that you make is like an act of violence, and you're choosing to help one particular design need and not the other. So you think it's worth accepting what you're othering.
Thanks, Hira. Okay, brilliant. We'll move on to our final speaker. Kevin, are you good? Are you unmuted? And
Just before we go, Bex, could I say thank you very much for being included this evening. We run a family restaurant business, and I have to get over there now just whilst things are a little bit chaotic, but I really appreciate being included tonight, and thank you everyone on the panel and everybody listening this evening.
oh, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, good luck.
Thanks very much. Good night.
Bye. Okay, Kevin, are you good?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. This is about a project called Mr. Justice, which is about creating AI and/or big data tools to help with the many charities that are active in to try and find out whether or not AI or machine learning could be used together or separately to help the community of actors who are part of the UK access to justice system. We weren't choosing to build an app, we were trying to find out which app or which apps might be able to make a difference. So the model we took was desk research, interviews and workshops, building an ontology, building prototypes, and then disseminating the findings. It involved us going around the houses over and over again in order to build the first part of our project, which was to create an ontology. That's it, there's the picture. We wanted to find out how all of the organisations that provide help to British citizens who require access to justice, how they work together or don't, what they offer or don't, where the power lies, the money, and potentially at least the solutions. What we found was, as you will all know, is that individual charities are very low on resources. Most of them didn't want to change, many do, but don't. So there was a great deal of uncertainty about how or what to do. And then there were some systemic problems, the ones that we started to think we should be able to address. Knowledge isn't shared very well at all between actors in this space. A lot of the knowledge that's required isn't in the network because, for instance, the Ministry of Justice doesn't make its own data available to them. There's low levels of trust between providers. They compete with one another and are trying to diversify their offerings in order to maintain their business, to stay being able to provide. They all suffer from very poor feedback. It's either poor or very absent as to what can be done. So we tried to build a map as one of the outcomes of our product. journey. We tried to map the system, the entire network of actors, because we found that uncertainty and volatility of the sector and rapid turnover meant that very few people could provide where do I get help with debt, where do I get help with marriage problems, where do I get help with, and so on and so forth. We did find that there were directories about, but they were not exhaustive, they were not regularly updated, and quite difficult to navigate in some cases. So we built a system of software tools that allowed us to get the entire network of actors, every single solitary organization, or in some cases individuals, were offering themselves and were visible in the digital domain. We were able to find. And having done so, we used nets to classify as actors. We used a variety to get new data about them. So for example, well, anyway, so we built a platform that can search basically anything, an online database, use search engines, use social media, can actually, on its own account, go out across the web looking for pages, domains and URLs that are of value. We can store that. In a way that's time-based, so we can actually see how the web's reacting or not reacting to events or issues. We can classify organizations, where they are, what type of business they are, what scale of service they're offering, what level of digital maturity they have. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. Whether or not they've accessed public funds, whether or not they have a company house registration, whether or not they have a Charities Commission registration, whether or not they are funded by the government to provide services, and so on. And then we use another set of tools for LNAT to, in effect, learn what businesses, organizations, charities, activist groups look like, what they're capable of and how to relate to one another, and use that to identify any new actors that emerge. So that's a simple and uncrowded description of the network that we found. These are two principal actors, and there's their relationships with other actors in the space. These are communities that we identified, self-selected communities, that is the people who speak mostly to one another, organize events with one another, tweet towards one another, repeat one another's tweets, all of the various data that we acquired. And that's an overall picture of the ultimate network that we discovered. We then built an engine which allowed us to take all of the different kinds of data, Twitter feeds, social media numbers, the company's house record, their charities commission record, their profits and loss and so on. Anything we can find, we can open PDFs, we can read web pages, we can do some quite sophisticated things about processing natural language in order to classify what we find there. I'll just give you one example, one quick example. We wanted to find out whether or not the people who are offering information across the web or representing themselves on the web, whether or not they were particularly digitally sophisticated. So we built a tool that goes to every single web presence we could find and creates a score. So is it an accessible website? Has it got a readability score? Does it have links to various facilities? Does it offer a Twitter? Does it offer a bot? Does it offer a payment gateway, etc., etc., etc.? So eventually what we were able to build, something about 80,000 different actors we found, and we boiled it down to around about 5,000 who were consistently offering a service which they described, our system used the words they used to describe themselves, which they described as providing access to justice. So we've built a system which is incredibly complete in a way that nothing else is currently of this system, of this ecosystem. It's consistent in the way it finds, classifies, and can give you access to the information that it has about those people. It's capable, we haven't built this yet to any great degree, but it is capable of self-curating. It's already capable of maintaining itself, but we actually believe it's possible to build something that can make itself better over time rather than simply go on being as good as it is. It's up to date. The system that's running runs every 7 days. The archive is updated, so we can tell who's disappeared, we can tell who's entered, we can tell who's changed their links, and so on and so forth. We believe that there are many, many uses for this. We've built bots, and of course, one of the things about building a bot how does one give it access to a lot of sophisticated information? Well, this tool set would allow you to use a bot, a very simple bot, to say, where do I live? What do I need to access? What hours are they open? Or can I make a booking? Or can I go online now? And so on. So if you like, what we're saying is that the back end to a bot system that could point you to the entire access to justice system now exists insofar as the data you would require to run it is now in one place. Of course, it can do a lot of other things, and in essence, we designed it as a tool to sit on the desk of an advisor in order to make their very complicated task of triage and redirecting people a bit more tractable. But I think it looks likely after the events of recent weeks that it's much more likely to be providing a service online. Not least because most of the people who provide voluntary work in this particular sector are older people, and it's unlikely they're going to expose themselves in the near future in public settings. So anyway, it also provides us a lot of new data about how the system is behaving, about what businesses look like. I mean, it answers really simple questions like how many childcare focused charities are there in the Northwest, how old are they, how much money have they got, and what do they describe as their service? All those sorts of questions could now be answered. It's relatively low cost and it's sustainable. What we found is that there's a lot of mapping in the area that we are working in. We think that there's been about £1 million spent by people who don't have a great deal of money, charities who don't have a great deal of money. It's been £1 million spent in the last 4 years on mapping exercises. And I think we've found two things really. It's always presumed that what's going on the ground can be captured by surveys, interviews, accessing public databases. And it's further presumed that the reality represented by such a map will remain stable over a long enough period such that it can be used to inform practical decision making. Our data shows that neither of those things are true. You can't really access the map as it were. It's a dynamic, interactive, and extremely volatile setup. In fact, we've done a sample over the last 14 days that shows that Shelter and Citizens Advice and so on are changing their links and offering new facilities. Obviously, it's a special time, but it just shows how dynamic this situation is. So what we're saying is maps that are made in terms of there's a static reality, let's try and describe it and use it, don't really work anymore, but this sort of method might. And it is generally applicable. That is to say, the tool set we've built can be applied to any area. It does need setting up. It can't just be switched on and we start looking at a different form of charity or a different form of commercial activity, but it can be done and it is generally applicable. Oh, I think I lost it.
Are you all right? Sorry, was that the end?
Sorry, my computer just exploded slightly. I'm sorry. Yes, that's the end.
That's the end.
My
Brilliant.
apologies.
Okay. It was all just very abrupt ending there, but we've got a question. So it sounds like a great resource, but how can it be accessed? Can people use it? Yeah, so Tommy Scribble's asking, can it be accessed and then disseminated? Are there APIs, etc.?
The intention is to create APIs so that it can be generally accessed. Yeah, I mean, as I was listening to the previous speaker, I was thinking there's every reason that Citizens Advice Bureau would be able to use a bot to say, if you're looking for access to justice issues, if you're looking for legal support or access to legal advice, where would it be and what form is it in? In fact, the database we've created is directly designed in order to be interrogated and used by a bot.
Brilliant. I've got a bit of a question here from Steve. You were breaking up slightly. I think we caught most of it, but Steve wants a clarification on what source was actually being searched to identify the actors.
We accessed the UK websites of about 150,000 actors. Driven by a simple outward branching search from the core group of legal support agencies that we found. The machine then went out to first and second order links, created a database of over 100,000, 150,000. And then we retrieved the content of those websites, and we used natural language processing and various other techniques to reduce that set again. And then we added a lot of metadata to each of those sites. And then again, went back through another process of a neural net learning so that we could classify them. We had in that database everything from the Companies House, Charity Commission, websites, Twitter, Facebook handles, and primary access, public access. UK Register of Grants, I can't remember. And then we went back, we built new tools and went back and got more information from those websites.
Really great. Thank you so much for joining us, Kevin. There are a couple more specific questions in the chat, so I don't know if you wanted to go in and answer those in the chat instead of out loud, because they're quite specific. But thank you.
Could I just say one thing? Our chatbot in the Victorian and Albert Museum was talked to for about 20 minutes by a Catholic priest, who then formally complained to the V&A about the manner in which he'd been dealt with. And this was a bot that explicitly said that I'm a bot.
Oh, that's a good story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, cheers. Okay, so I am going to move into the next section, but before I do, I have just launched a very important poll. So I'll let you all answer that very, very important poll. You should all be able to see it now while I'm moving into the next section. So this is our community shout outs, and normally we would do this on the fly. So if anybody had a shout out, they could shout out. But we've actually got 3 signed up in advance today, and they're really great. So I'm very excited about it. So if we start with Tom, I'll let you get your, have you got a presentation, or are you just gonna unmute yourself and go for it?
Am I speaking now? Sorry, I'm not very good with computers. I've never used this. Oh, I think my video's turned off. I think Hera turned my video off.
Oh yeah, let me turn your video off. Sorry, that was us trying to
Save bandwidth.
Yeah. Oops, wrong person. That's Hera. Ask to start video. So,
Start my video.
Amazing.
Winning. Cool. Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Tom from a company called Disposal. We help people find the right place for their waste. And I'm going to take you through a conversation that I had with someone on the phone about a website link that I bought. So they phoned me up Hi, Tom. Oh, no, it's how can I speak to Tom, please? Oh, hi, it's Tom at your disposal. Okay, cool. Hey, Tom, so you own a website address called wastenotwantbot.com. And I was just wondering if you'd be able to, if you'd want any help building that website. I was like, oh yeah, actually I would. Something that like we're not able to do yet. So basically what the website is going to be is a conversational robot to so that citizens can talk to household waste recycling centres to find the best place to take their waste. So do you know when you're like, oh, I've got a mattress and I need to, can I take it here? What time you open? Do I need a permit? Can I take a van there? All of this, I think, can be dealt with on a chatbot. So we bought the website link, waste.onebot.com, and we could do with building that. And the person on the other end of the phone went, all right, thanks, bye. Now, so my question to you is, do people think, other than the person that was on the end of the phone, do people think that would be a useful service? So we find as a disposal, we get a lot of interactions from the public about just trying to find out very basic information about their household waste recycling centres, their tips, their dumps, whatever you want to call it. And I think it could be very useful because people really struggle with this. And we say we're not the council, we're not local government, we're not any of that. But people are still like, yeah, but can I take my mattress to every street household waste recycling centre in Manchester? So then we spend the next 5 minutes looking for that. So I was just wondering if people would be interested in that. And if they would, where do you think we can start creating this database of waste and centres? That's it.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, people, if you want to talk in the chat, say if you think that would be useful, and maybe if you know where that data is and how we could get it. Tom, I'll let you chat to people in the chat, but it looks like a lot of people think it would be useful.
Cool.
Okay, so Edwin, if you want to get set up, no one can see the results from the poll yet, but I can, and it's very controversial, quite exciting. So I will release those after the community announcements. But yeah, Edwin, if you want to go.
Okay. Hi everybody. It's good to be here. I do have a slide that I'm hoping I can be tech savvy enough to share with you. Basically, I wanted to very briefly mention a project that I'm working on at the MMU. We want to establish, and I think the people who are online today are exactly the kind of people I need to be talking to. So I've put my email address and the academic who I'm working with, Dr. Keely Crockett, and I'm hoping that you'll email us after this. Basically, we want to establish a charter for ethical AI across Greater Manchester, because we think Manchester is great at collaborating, and this needs to be a collaborative effort. Interesting that Bex said that there's 200 different guidelines out there in terms of how to do ethical AI, and that's exactly what we've discovered. But what's missing is the bridging the gap between those guidelines and actual implementation in your business, your council. How do you procure AI ethically? How do you develop new AI ethically? And it's that we want the charter to basically fill that gap, particularly the new digital blueprint for Greater Manchester was published just a few weeks ago, and they actually states that they want Greater Manchester to be the leading centre in the UK and Europe for cyber and digital ethics, trust and security. And we think this totally answers that. We're just starting to explore what we think this looks like, and because I've only got 3 minutes, I'm not going to tell the whole story now, but it's a good story. But basically where we're at, we've got some ideas of how we think this should look, and what the activity may look like, and why we think this is also quite unique. It's obviously a place-based solution, particular to what works for Greater Manchester, but we do see it interfacing with the national story in terms of dialogue with people who are working at national level, but also with Greater Manchester, essentially pioneering what the implementation of ethics looks like in the real world. But the key thing really is that we think this has to be a co-produced piece of work. It's not the university's place to lead this. It's very much a collaborative effort, and so we're hoping that people get in touch with us to say, yes, we're on board, we're really interested in this, or we haven't the faintest idea what ethics looks like for us, or we don't have the skills, but we want to work with you on terms of what that charter looks like, and then also how compliance, if that's the right word, with that charter might also be implemented, how to make it transparent. I will say that one of the things that I think is particularly unique about this is we're very passionate about plugging in the general public into this, so that there is public scrutiny of what is happening, because we think that's one of the voices that's not heard, even though it's often the public who are the main subjects of AI and are faced with decisions made by AI on a daily basis. Possibly don't even know that's what they're interacting with, judging from the stories we just heard. So there's more I can say, but at this stage it's just a flag that this is a project that we've just started on, and please email us. It's definitely ambitious. It's definitely something that we think really works for Greater Manchester, and we think it might help us navigate through those 200 guidelines that are out there that actually need to become a bit more real for businesses and developers and researchers out there. That's me.
Thanks, Edwin. Really, really interesting. Yeah, what was I right? Are there about 200?
Well, we've looked at, I think we've reviewed about 35 of the main ones, the European ones, by the Turing Institute, Digital Catapult.
Sorry, it's my
That's
nan.
all right. So we've reviewed some of those, and we've already started to do some work pulling out principles that we think could go into a charter that are common across those guidelines, and then some that are quite unique. And we're particularly keen that this is a sort of that the charter sees itself as an enabler about delivering benefit rather than you shouldn't do this. It's more about, you know, what can be done and what should be done, rather than too much on the on the negative side.
Ace. Okay, the last and final community shout out. Anne from Snook, are you ready to go?
Yes, I don't have slides. I didn't want to tempt fate technology getting them up, but I'll put 3 links in the chat. So it's a little bit different, but I'm wondering if you have all received a text or an email from your mobile phone provider telling you that if you access the NHS website and the information about the coronavirus, that those pages will be free, even if you don't have data on your phone. I'm hoping you got them, but anyway, so I've got 2 minutes to tell you the story behind that, how that came about. And I know I'm standing between you and your dinner, so I'll stick to 2 minutes. But it started because I'm from Snook. We're a service design agency, and we've done lots of user research over the last few years on digital inclusion. Interestingly, we were involved in the tech versus abuse research, which Dina mentioned in the first presentation. And in that research, we have found a very specific need, which is around the users who have a mobile phone, but regularly run out of data on their pay-as-you-go. They can't afford a monthly contract just because of the cost, or also because they have very poor credit rating, and then they can't access that monthly contract. They keep running out of data. So for them, these digital services are effectively behind a paywall, and they're told to go to the library, but you can only access the library for a couple of hours a day, and then you have to move. So they move from like the bus to the Starbucks to the library to their friends. They hack into various networks they can find. And back in November, I went to a conference and I heard Jamie Wells and Hans from Wikipedia and Hans Vestberg from Verizon talk about the responsibility of the tech giants in digital inclusion and economic social inclusion. And Jamie Wells was talking about Wikipedia Zero, which apparently is very well known, but I had never heard of it. And it started from students in South Africa saying that they wanted free access to Wikipedia so that they could compensate the fact that their library didn't have enough resources. And it was shut down because it goes against net neutrality, which means that the mobile providers and the internet providers cannot choose to present you one content over another. It's up to you whether you buy the Independent or the Guardian. It's up to you if you access this website or that website. But it made me think that there are services for which net neutrality doesn't apply. You can only apply for a passport from one government. You can only apply for universal credit from one DWP. You can only get your bin collected from your local council. You can only, and the list goes on. So for those, the net neutrality principle doesn't apply, but the need is even greater when we talk about like benefits, for example. So it made me think that we could zero rate, which means make them free, access to those pages like universal credit. So we brought the idea to the Scottish Government, who's working on it for the newly devolved social security. And on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks ago, maybe now it's just 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting with Nominet and saying, what do you think? You know, do you think we need to research it? Is it a good idea? Has anyone done anything before? They not only decided that it was a good idea, Chris Ashworth, who's a superhero of everything, said, yeah, it's a great idea and we need to do it now because people need reliable information about the coronavirus, no matter what their circumstances. And then 10 days later, it went live. So in 10 days, we managed to get Nominet, then we managed to get the UK government and the Department of Health and Social Care. You can imagine how busy they are, but I'm thrilled that they got us the time of day. We got all the NHS services across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Some of them had never worked with each other. They didn't know how to contact each other. And then we got all the mobile phone providers, EE, BT, O2, Vodafone 3. Thankfully, one of them blinked first and said, yes, we'll do it and we'll cover the cost. The others were thinking about it, trying to reach the right person, leaning in that direction, committing to thinking about it. So we got one on board, and at that point, all the others got on board. And it went live on the following Friday. It took a few more days for the government to announce it. And then somebody said to the providers, well, how are your user going to know? Because if they don't have any data, they can't start searching the web. So then they've started texting everyone and sending various emails. And the reason was I was really, really delighted that Becky invited me to talk about this is, first, I would never be able to get to Manchester because I'm based in Glasgow. But it's two things that I'm taking away from this is, as service designers and all the services that you described today, we design and we develop the inside of a service, but actually sometimes we have to push ourselves to think of the barriers that are outside of the service that we normally, in normal circumstances, have no control over. It's essentially it wasn't really our job to do this, but it doesn't mean that we should take them for granted, and we should tackle them wherever we can. And the second thing, it's kind of a call to arms. These are extraordinary circumstances. The old rules don't apply. And I think we want to start creating the future we want to see after this crisis. And the only way that we are going to like the future is if we have a hand in creating it. And it doesn't matter how tiny the level are, we're each a drop in the ocean. And yeah, each of us individually are not going to make a difference, but if we all work based on our experience. So thinking of all the services that you've described today, how can they help make things better in the short term and in the long term? I don't know if that was 2 minutes, but I'm done.
No, everyone's really interested in it. So you've had lots of comments in the chat if you want to go and have a look at them. But you've also had 2 questions, which, do you mind if I ask you live? Because I think they're really interesting. So one is, should digital access now be a human right?
Yes. I wanted to stick to the time. So one of the things that we're trying to push now is that, obviously, okay, it was great to have the health pages 0 rated. But that's, to me, that's just a prototype, really. Okay, it's a big one, it's an unusual one, but it's still a prototype. There are 2 things that need to be done. We need to 0 rate all the government services, all the essential government services. .gov.uk, we've got our eyes on you, because that would mean all the local authorities and everything. And the second thing is, this is a very niche need filled by a temporary measure, but in the long run, we need to get everyone online. And we've started to talk about that holistic digital inclusion, because people need to have a reason to get online, a motivation, a device, the access, the skills, the confidence. And this isn't a, great, you're online, you're confident, you have the skills. At any moment in your life, those could be taken away from you. So we're thinking of like context of domestic violence, as Dina was talking about. If you have to move out of your home, you might lose your access. Or if a family splits up, then the partner who used to maintain the router maybe is no longer there, and at that point you've lost it. So it's never a given, and it's, think that human rights and holistic inclusion is a given.
Thank you so much, and that's a great project that you've worked on. Go and have a chat to people in the chat. I think they'd like to have a talk to you. One of the questions is, do you have any links about the project that they can look at in more detail? So do feel free to post any links in the chat so people can read up about it. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is basically the end. All we have to do now is I'll talk about the next event. I will end the poll though first, which I know you're all waiting for, and I've shared the results. So there you go, Marvin, the paranoid android. We've got a lot of fans of that particular robot, but none whatsoever of Bishop, which is good because he's a baddie, right? No. What? He's a goodie. He's the goodie. He's an alien. He's a goodie. But why does no one like him? Data, also very disappointed by Data not getting any more results there. Obviously that was very important. But the next event is, I can't share my thing for some reason. It's always fun. Next event, I just know when it is. So what we're talking about is Digital Trustees, and it's on the 22nd of April. It's going to be remote again, like this. So if you're a charity and you feel like you would benefit from having digital people on your board of trustees, please do come along and hear stories of other digital trustees and other charities and how you might get involved with that. Or if you're interested in being one yourself, if you'd like to maybe be on the board of a charity, do join in. I have my presentation now, I think, so I can share it. I'm going to share it because I have 2 links that I want to share with you. So we have a Slack channel, which is important in the times of not being face-to-face. So if you do want to carry on with any of the conversations that we've had today, there is that Slack channel that you can join, and you can find it on techforgood.live/Slack. We also have a newsletter that we send out monthly that we talk about the podcast that we run. You can get links to that on techforgood.live/newsletter. And also I'm going to share with you in the chat a feedback form, if that's okay. Thank you for joining us on this voyage of discovery of the Zoom settings as well. I did actually bring pizza and beer to make it feel more authentic, and like I was at an actual Tech for Good event, and it was helpful. I don't know if anybody else did that, but I really enjoyed the pizza and beer. So let me send this link to you in the chat. Please do fill out the feedback form. It would be really, really helpful to know what you might enjoy from one of these events in the future. But that's it. That's the end of the event. So feel like I don't know how to end, because now I would say, let's go and have more pizza and beer, but I don't provide the pizza and beer for this event. So if you have your own pizza and beer, feel free to go and have that. Let's continue the conversation on Twitter and in the Slack if you want to join up. And hopefully we'll see you on the 22nd of April, which is the Digital Trustees event, where we'll be talking all about trustees from a digital perspective. Okay, thank you to all of the speakers today, and thank you for joining, and speak to you all soon. Bye.